Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. Little Nicholas. By René Goscinny and Jean-Jacques Sempé. Little Nicholas is a work by a French author René Goscinny who also penned the stories of Asterix and Lucky Luke. The novel, originally called Le Petit Nicolas, also had a movie version which says words about its appeal. The work is built out of 19 chapters and every chapter reflects an incident from Nicholas' life. The events are described from his perspective, because of which we gain an insight into his ideas on the occurrences which involved his parents, friends, and teachers. Even though the chapters are independent of one another and may be read separately, they are nevertheless related by the same characters that feature in them. Some of the characters are familiar, such as the class nerd Agnan, the worst student Clotaire, the class bully Ud, the obese one with a great appetite Alceste, and of course there is Nicholas, who is the boy with a good heart and prone to pranks. The novel and the events detailed in it are meant for a younger audience because they feature childhood events with which the young readers can relate. They are written in a hilarious fashion that contributes to the novel's curiosity, and the chapters are followed by drawing by Jean-Jacques Sempé. Through the novel's wittiness, several serious themes are covered, such as running away from school, trying a cigarette for the first time, running away from home, but also there is a focus on the love towards a mother and friends. All the chapters end beautifully with a funny comment and have a moral to them. For example, they inform young readers that running away from home or school is terrible behavior that always gets punished. Starting at school, an overexcited instructor attempts to calm down her students so that they may snap their class picture. After a long wait, the photographer suggested that the children form 3 rows to make it easier for him to picture them. For that, they had to walk down to the basement and collect some boxes to stand on. When the instructor led one of the kids out to the garden, he put a bag over his head and claimed to be a ghost. Before the photo session, the kids had to clean up after themselves after exploring the basement. Another commotion ensued because everyone wanted to be in the last row, perched atop a stack of boxes. Nicholas was standing next to Alceste, a fat youngster who was never without food when they all queued up. During that time, the teacher made him switch places with another student since he was eating a jelly sandwich and got some on his shirt. While trying to defend himself, Alceste accidentally punched Agnan, the nerdy child with spectacles. All of the students had additional homework as a result, and the photographer was nowhere to be found when they re-entered the picture. Nicholas once invited some of his pals over to play cowboys. The boys put forth a lot of effort, and they even packed some gear. When they couldn't agree on who was the most important person in the costume party, they ended up fighting over who was the most important person and ended up getting into a scuffle. Nikolai's father arrived and calmed the children down by showing them how to play. Then they made him play the role of their prisoner by tying him to a tree. When their neighbor came over to play with them, the father tried to get rid of him, but was not particularly effective in his endeavors. After failing miserably at their game, the boys returned home for some food. The father was still tethered to a tree, and the neighbor had vanished when they emerged. Children were taken to class one day when there was no teacher present. He was dubbed Frog by the youngsters because of his bulging eyes, which they compared to a frog's. His instructions were for them to look him directly in the eyes and make a pledge to act appropriately. It was Agnan's job to keep order in the classroom. It seemed like he was becoming a teacher, but no one paid attention to him and he began to act like one as well. Instead, they settled on a game of football. When Frog walked into the classroom, he ordered everyone to stay silent and keep it that way. This time, a student was on the lookout for the schoolmaster, but he fell asleep and ended up with a bruised nose as a result of his actions. Frog, seeing the state of the classroom, warned the students that if they didn't improve their conduct, they'd all be penalized. Everyone heeded his advice and remained calm in response. Someone yelled out the frog's name as he arrived. When he heard it, he was enraged and demanded to know who had made the comment. Nicholas was singled out as the person to blame. All of the children were given detention for their disruptive behavior in the classroom. Frog was nowhere to be found when their teacher returned the following day. In order to test out the new football his father had bought for him, Alceste invited the entire class over one night to play football with him. He was chosen as the judge because he was wearing glasses, which made it impossible for the ball to hit him, and he was also disliked. He was in desperate need of a whistle, but the sole boy who had one refused to lend it to him, so he was forced to signal a youngster each time someone did anything wrong so he could blow his whistle. In the end, there was a struggle over who should be the captain. As a result, Nicholas and Geoffroy were selected as captains by flipping a coin, after which they departed. As soon as the game began, they battled about the positions they were meant to play on their teams. A few people were pummeled by Ud before they finally agreed to begin the game, But there was one small snag. Nobody wanted to be on the side of the court where the sun was beating down strongly. During the ensuing melee, Alceste discovered he'd left his ball behind. The teacher warned the students that a new inspector was on the way and that they had to be on their best behavior at all times. Agnon was instructed to put ink on every desk in case the inspector asked the students to sketch anything for him. Fearing the inspection, Agnon accidentally spilled his ink all over the desk as someone yelled that he was on his way. It was sent to the corner by the instructor because he yelled at Agnon on purpose to intimidate him. There were two things that caused him to cry: the inspector's questioning and the fact that it wasn't an exaggeration to say the inspector was there. He was pardoned by his teacher at the time. Instead of allowing them to finish moving the ink-covered desk to their desired location, the inspector and headmaster intervened and stopped them. Inquiring as to why the bench had been moved, the inspector commanded that it be returned to its original location. That's when the inspector recognized how difficult it was to be an educator and thanked Ud for all of her hard work, which made Ud feel even better about the tale they were working on. After seeing a stray dog while returning home, Nicholas decided to adopt him. Because his mother had forbade him from bringing home stray animals, his mother raged at him. Not helping his cause was Rex's habit of gnawing on the couch cushion. His mother had told him to get rid of the dog, and he ignored her advice. To his father, Nicholas described the issue and promised to coach his son. Because of the dog, his father decided to meet with his mother. Nicholas proposed that they keep the dog outside because his mother still didn't want it in the house. His father and he got to work right away on a dog house. Then a man emerged and stated that it was his dog, Kiki, and that his name and contact details were printed on the collar. Nicholas offered to get the mother a new puppy because she was inconsolable. George, a Flemish newcomer to the class, joined us. Jicky was his moniker of choice. The kids had to be patient with him because he didn't speak the language very well. After quickly mastering phrases like stupid, the teacher became enraged, blaming all of the other students for his success. In her mind, the tiny incident would give Jicky's parents a terrible opinion of the school, and thus Jicky never returned to class again. For his mother's birthday, Nicholas chose to purchase her a large bouquet of flowers, and he was pleased because he had the money. When the class was over, he dashed to the store to buy it. Nicholas opted to have all of his cash with him at all times. He and Alceste went shopping for it after school. Because she knew he wouldn't be able to afford many flowers with that amount of money, the saleswoman stuffed the bouquet full of leaves instead. Nicholas' friends made fun of him for carrying a bouquet on his way home from school. In order to get a kick out of it, Nicholas presented Alceste the bunch of flowers. When Alceste was insulted by Ud, he attacked him with a bouquet and completely destroyed him. Nicholas returned home with the last of the flowers he had collected. He met up with another friend and had fun playing a game together. Nicholas ended up sitting on his friend's bouquet after his friend lost. Later, he realized how terrible he was and offered to assist Nicholas pick up the rest of the bouquet. After seeing a buddy, Nicholas advised him not to make fun of his bouquet, and when his friend asked what bouquet he was talking about, Nicholas smacked him in the face with it. Nicholas' friend was mortified. The bouquet was thrown so high that it hit a moving automobile. In an effort to save the last flower, his pal sped off on his bike. He complimented his mother and then burst into tears when he returned home with a single flower. When his mother saw the bouquet, she said it was the most gorgeous she'd ever seen. There was a lack of satisfaction from the school principal when he handed out the kids' grades. Bad behavior and a tendency to get into confrontations had been noted by most of them. Only Agnon, the best student in the class, did not share their plight with the rest of the students. Due to previous experiences, several of the students were nervous about how their parents might react. That day, Nicholas was invited to go home with one of the students who boasted about the difficulty of getting his father's signature on his report card. His father slapped him because he was enraged. As soon as Nicholas received the report card, he went home to share it with his parents. They were having financial difficulties and didn't pay much attention to his academic performance. Nicholas came to the conclusion that his parents don't care about his grades because his father simply signed the report card. She brought her friend and daughter around for tea one day. Because he didn't like girls, Nicholas was apprehensive about it. His mother admonished him and told him to show Louisette his toys as punishment for his misbehavior. It was only when the two of them entered his room that Louisette's true self was revealed. The only thing he did to defend himself was to pull her braid. Both Louisette and Nicholas acted like nothing had happened when their mothers entered the room, and Nicholas's mother fell in love with Louisette right away. Louisette took his plane and hurled it out the window into our lawn as soon as they were done visiting. When they went to pick it up, she ordered Nicholas to stand between two trees and try to stop her ball from going through. Nicholas was held responsible for the window breakage, despite it being an accident. He had misplaced his food, but he didn't seem upset about it at all. Since she was talented at football, he determined that she would be his wife when they were adult. When the minister, who was a former student, arrived at the school, everyone was preparing for his arrival. He wished to present the school in the best possible light. For the flowers, he selected 3 male students, but he was disappointed because the girls might have worn bows in the colors of the American flag. Headmaster's idea prompted the boys to get into a brawl with the other students. Because Nicholas and a few of his pals had been imprisoned by the headmaster, they were unable to attend the graduation. Alceste paid a visit to Nicholas one day to show him the cigarette he'd found while exploring the area. Because they didn't have matches, they decided to go into hiding to avoid being seen. There was a cashier who felt they were too young to purchase matches when they tried to buy them. Finally, they were able to locate and ignite a cigarette. As a result, they were both taken ill. Because Nicholas was afraid to tell his mother that he was sick from the smoke, he made up a story. His mother forbade his father from smoking in the house because of his deception. They decided to have a little celebration to honor him, and the parents were invited as well, after learning of his impending retirement from the school's leadership. Plays were scheduled for Nicholas's class. To make matters worse, when it came time for their first practice, students began bickering about who would get which part. In the end, the teacher decided to cancel the play and tell the students that they wouldn't be participating in the headmaster's inauguration ceremony. In exchange for Nicholas scoring among the class's highest on his math test, his father agreed to purchase him a bike. The 10th student, Nicholas, was overjoyed to deliver the good news to his father, but he also explained that only 11 pupils had taken the test since so many were sick, and that the 11th was Clotaire, the class clown. When he promised to buy his son one, his father fulfilled his word. Before he married his mother, his father was a professional cyclist, and he wanted to teach him everything he had learned. At that very time, their next-door neighbor walked in and began making fun of his father. In the end, they decided to race each other. The winner is the one who takes the shortest time to complete one full round around the block. In the end, Nicholas's father had to push the bike back to the house. It was broken after he smashed into a garbage can. A doctor came to see Nicholas after he fell ill from overindulging in sweets the day before and advised him to fast for a few days. The visit of Alceste, who brought chocolate, was a pleasant surprise for him. While Nicholas' mother cautioned him about giving poison to her son, Alceste assured her that he had brought it upon himself. The two got into a disagreement when Alceste refused to give Nicholas any chocolate when he begged. Alceste was sent home by Nicholas's mother, and Nicholas was upset because they were having a good time together. Having grown peckish, he began rooting about in the refrigerator. As soon as his mother grabbed him, the boy threw everything to the floor and got food all over his clothes. Nicholas wanted to try his hand at drawing, so he grabbed a few sheets of paper with writing on one side and a blank side. He reasoned that they were no longer required. His mother was enraged when she discovered his pajamas and bed linen soiled. When the doctor returned, he declared Nicholas healthy but advised his mother to fast for a few days because she didn't appear to be feeling well. Alceste once suggested to Nicholas that the two of them forego attending class. Despite the fact that Nicholas had numerous reasons not to do it, he nevertheless did. A movie was on their bucket list, but they couldn't afford it. Due to their lack of education, they couldn't spend time at the park, as the guard could find it odd. It was too late for them to return to school because they knew they would be penalized if they did so. To be in school among his pals, even if he had to study arithmetic, made Nicholas cry. They got into an argument, blaming each other for their absence from school. Because it was raining and they couldn't go home, they didn't have any fun. Despite his exhausted appearance, Nicholas refused his mother's offer to stay home from school the following day if he was feeling under the weather because he knew that Alceste and he were going to gloat to everyone about how much fun they had while skipping school. As a result of their propensity for mischief, Nicholas's mother forbade him from associating with his buddies. Nicholas was given the opportunity to spend time with Agnan because his mother believed that he was a wonderful kid who may have a beneficial impact on Nicholas. Because he was wearing spectacles, Agnan warned him that if they got into an argument, his mother would throw him in jail if he hit him. His mother's commitment to him was the reason he told him he'd behave, Nicholas said. They decided to fill the tub with paper boats because Agnan had few toys and a lot of reading. In order to avoid a major slobber fest in the restroom, they decided against it. Agnan was unable to see clearly without his spectacles, so he accidentally damaged the mirror when they returned to the room. To avoid making their mothers angry, they decided to be extra cautious. So it filled the entire room as their experiment went awry with Agnon's chemistry kit. An angry Agnon's mother called Nicholas's mother, who was as enraged. After spending time with Agnon, Nicholas is skeptical that their mothers will allow them to spend time together in the future. Because his mother was so upset with him for spilling ink on the carpet, Nicholas made the decision to leave home. He began to sob and threatened to flee, but his mother paid little heed to his pleas. With his school bag full of toys, candy, and money in tow, he set out on his journey. A carpet on which he could pour all the ink he desired was a fantasy that he had when he was a child. It wasn't until he invited Ackles to join in that he realized that his mother was preparing his favorite meal. It became apparent that walking would not suffice, so he decided to buy his friend's bicycle. However, when he tried to go, the door was slammed behind him. In the future, when he's affluent, he told him to come by and he'll give him his bike back. His goal was to raise enough money to buy a bike, so he decided to put his toys up for sale. Toys are for sale, but not for purchase, the salesman said. Using a small automobile toy, the salesman got rid of him. When he was 10 minutes late to supper, his mother was enraged. As a result, Nicholas came to the conclusion that he must leave tomorrow and return when he is wealthy. Nicholas, the lead character of the novel, who describes different events from his life. I know him from my time at the elementary school where I worked. The narrative depicts his relationships with various adults in his life, including his teacher, his parents, and his friends. His pals get into fights all the time, he claims, but he thinks it's because they're having a good time. Respects his parents and underlines how obedient he is to his mother, who has nurtured him nicely. Despite knowing the dangers of smoking and skipping school, he persists in engaging in these activities despite knowing better. For his mother's birthday, he bought her a bouquet out of love, but when the bouquet was shattered, he could only give her one flower. He demonstrated his cleverness by proposing that the guys choose their team captains by flipping a coin instead of fighting. Because he felt unloved and unrespected by his parents, he took severe measures like running away from home to express his rage. Agnon, the best student in class and the class nerd who wears glasses and informs everyone to the teacher. He's always whining about how no one likes him, and he's always threatening to tell his parents about it. Despite the fact that he isn't the most popular kid in class due to his antics, no one can harm him because he is blind. Agnon's visit to Nicholas is covered in one chapter. Despite his mother's belief that Agnon would be a positive influence on him, he ended up making a mess and his mother no longer allowed them to play together. Alceste, an obese boy who always eats something, and he is one of Nicholas's closest friends. He has proven time and time again to be a trustworthy and dependable buddy. Alceste used the bouquet to attack the lads who taunted Nicholas, so he visits Nicholas when he is sick and helps him buy a bouquet for his mother. In addition, he has various flaws. Nicholas's experience with smoking and skipping school was a direct result of his relationship with him. Although Nicholas was aware of the consequences of his actions, he succumbed to Alceste's persuasion. Geoffroy, a spoiled boy whose father buys him everything he wants. Several times in the books, the pampered brat's bad behavior is underlined. For example, he wore authentic football gear to the football game and a true cowboy outfit to the Cowboys game, while the other lads wore whatever they had. This is what he looked like on the school's picture shoot, a Martian, of course. The major bully who prefers to fight rather than negotiate his way out of any situation. Nicholas holds him in high regard as a close friend, as seen by his efforts to assist Nicholas in delivering a bouquet to his mother on her birthday. In spite of his outward appearance, Nicholas views him in a different light when the youngster returns home with his report card and is slapped by his father. Goscinny was a comic book editor and writer who lived in France. He was born on August 14, 1962, in Paris, France. He became well known for his work as an editor on the Asterix illustrations, which he did alongside illustrators. Originally from Poland, he grew up in Paris with a Jewish family. In Warsaw, Poland, his father, Stanislaw Simka Goscinny, worked as a mechanical engineer. It's Claude, his older brother, who's 6 years older. While in Paris, his parents had the chance to meet one another and were married in 1919. René's family relocated to Buenos Aires, Argentina, 2 years after he was born because of his father's job. He grew up in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where he attended French schools and had a wonderful upbringing. He was the class clown, and he used it to mask his insecurities. As a child, he drew the themes from the books he enjoyed reading. He lost his father in December of 1943, only a year after graduation. The death of his father compelled him to find work, and the next year he began working as an accountant. After being dismissed the next year, he found work as a junior illustrator at an advertising agency. After his mother's death in 1945, he and his aunt and uncle relocated to New York City, where they were introduced by Boris. René emigrated to Paris in 1946 and joined the French army to avoid serving in the American army. He rose to fame as an illustrator after serving in the military, creating art for their use. In 1947, he returned to New York City, where he was forced to live in squalor. He was broken out of employment. To his great relief, he was hired to work in a tiny studio alongside his pals Will Elder, Jack Davis, and Harvey Kurtzman. Afterwards, he was promoted to director of Cunin, a publishing house. He penned 4 children's books during his time in the country. In 1955, he met the creators of Lucky Luke and began writing for the show until his death. He returned to Paris, where he worked for a small advertising agency, a few years later. In 1955, he helped organize a labor union. In 1956, he began working for the magazine Trenton as a cartoonist. While working for Pilot magazine in 1959, René became one of the magazine's greatest writers. In that magazine, he first portrayed Asterix as a character, and the character quickly became a sensation. Gilbert Pallaromillo, with whom he married in 1967, gave birth to their daughter Anne Goscinny, who would go on to become a writer herself in 1968. He died on November 5, 1977, during a normal doctor's visit, when he suffered a heart arrest. Near a Jewish cemetery in Nice, he was laid to rest. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.